I am vengeance. I am the knight. I own a lot of Batman action figures, so let's rank 10 of the best of them. It's Morphin' time! Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome to my top 10 Batman action figures list. I decided to do this because the Batman came out, and it inspired me to do this list. This is just going to be a random spattering of figures. The rules of this list are there are no rules. So if you agree or disagree with any of my rankings, or think that something should have been on this list that wasn't, leave a comment down below and we can talk about it. Also be sure to hit like and subscribe while you're down there because that helps build the channel and helps us continue growing. So without further ado, let's get into the list. Alright, so number 10 on the list is the Azrael Batman figure from McFarlane Toys, based on Batman Curse of the White Knight. Now, I do love 90s Azbat, and I do love the DC Classics figure of that, but there's just something about this guy that takes it to a new level. Maybe a more modern redesign, may just be the overall vibe and colors, but I really, really do like this. And I said there are no rules on the list, but I kind of kept to like one version of Batman of each of the sort of variants, and I thought this Azrael Batman was just a little bit more striking overall, and I just really like it. I mean, it's a cool looking figure. His articulation's kind of weird. That's probably why he's a little lower on the list. Like, his elbows don't work too great, but I like that he kept his sword, something that I think original Azrael Batman could have benefited from as well. But overall, that's my number 10 pick. So number 9 is going to be kind of a combo pick because it is the Jim Gordon Batman as well as the Rookie armor. Since Jim Gordon Batman can wear Rookie as a suit of armor, it still counts as a Batman. It's funny because he's supposed to have a Batman design, but he does look like a cute bunny rabbit with those ears. I overall really like the designs here. I thought the storyline was interesting. It was like, well, Batman's missing. Who's going to take up the mantle? None of the Bat family did it, and instead GCPD kind of commissioned their own Batman in the form of Jim Gordon. And I thought it was a cool idea, and it executed well into action figure form. Now, Rookie was a Build-A-Figure for the Mattel version, so that made him a little harder to get, but I do really appreciate, you know, the overall design work here and how sort of comics faithful they are, but how they blended into the DC universe sort of styling that Mattel was known for. But overall, it's a unique take on Batman, and it's one that I do remember quite fondly from the comics, and I appreciate the action figures that came from it. Number 8 is the Thomas Wayne Batman from Flashpoint from McFarlane Toys. Now, this was an interesting character choice, and I thought it was really cool at the time of Flashpoint. I think he's definitely overexposed now because they just keep bringing him back. But I do think this has turned out as a very nice figure overall. I never had any previous Thomas Wayne Batman figures, so this one is a nice addition. It's a shame that lately Warner Brothers has completely outlawed firearms on characters that should have them, because this is probably one of the last figures to have that. But he did make him turn out quite nice. I especially like the cape design. I like how it kind of keeps closer to the body, but is still very dynamic in a lot of ways. So overall, it's a nice version of Thomas Wayne Batman, and probably the best one we're going to get at this point in time. Number 7, we have the always awesome Death Metal Batman from Dark Knight's Death Metal, who also has a really cool bike and is absolutely not like giving him bias and points for just existing, but I mean, it kind of does. I love the idea of Death Metal's design work, especially with the main trinity kind of getting a punk rock heavy metal redesign, and just Batman's here has just got like studded cape, he's got the scythe, it's just a really awesome look, and then he's riding the bones of a giant bat as a motorcycle. Yes, I know technically it's supposed to be the Joker Dragon, but it looks like a bat, and I'm sticking to it. But this is, you know, it's one of the coolest looking figures and definitely something up McFarlane Toys' alley, especially with all that detail and all that depth and kind of the crazy heavy metalness of it. And I just really think it turned out nice as a figure. On his own, the Batman is still cool, and the bike just makes it better. But overall, number 7 pick. Number 6 is the Hellbat armor Batman from the Batman and Robin comics. Now, this is the McFarlane Toys version. It's one of my favorite Batsuit designs. Between the blacks and the reds and the lines and just the overall size and chunk, I really do like it. And this figure is fantastic. They went with a different choice with the wings. Instead of it being more of a cape, they went with the open wing style. and that's fine. But as you can see, those wings kind of come off kind of easy. So I think that's why he's a little bit lower on the list. It's one of the most amazing designs I think we've ever gotten for a Batman suit, and I really do love it, and I love having it as a figure. In fact, this is my first McFarlane DC figure, and yeah, he just turned out really, really nice, and overall, it's still a great figure, even with its minor limitations here and there. Number 5 is the Mattel DC Universe Classics Modern Batman, which I believe first appeared in the Gotham City 5-pack, but was also in the Dynamic Duo 2-pack. This is still one of my favorite Batman figures ever. While not by modern standards is he anything special, I mean, heck, he's just pretty much the standard DC Universe Classics body mold, and his knees are getting loose. I still love the way this guy looks. It's from an era where I started reading Batman comics, especially with that symbol design and the overall color scheme, and I just think he looks great. He still really holds up for me in a lot of ways, and that may be partially nostalgia, but I still think this is a very nice looking Batman, and he's still the primary Batman on my DC Classic shelf. Nothing they made ever after that ever superseded it, so credit to them. I think this turned out pretty great, and I know this also basically just subs in like 10 other Batmans that use the same mold, including the head, and you know what, that's fine, because I think they honestly, the standard DC Universe Classics mold for the time really worked. It didn't work over time, but at the time it was made, it was quite great. So that is my number 5 pick. Number 4 is the McFarlane Toys Batman White Knight Batman. And this time the bike absolutely has no standing because the figure came out like a year prior and I already loved the figure, but this bike is amazing. The only thing it was lacking was a second holding hand so that Batman could grip the other wrist or the other throttle. But other than that, I mean, I love the way the figure itself turned out. Like if you just look at this here, it's so much just, you know, it's a Batman walked off the comic page into an action figure form, and I love that look. I think it's one of the things that McFarlane Toys really does a good job with, and it just really worked out. And then, yeah, sometime later they gave him his cycle, which is this big beefy monstrosity that can also shrink up if it's too big. But honestly, I really do love the way that this figure turned out, and especially with the way the bike turned out. In fact, all the Batman White Knight figures were pretty fantastic, and overall, it's a really nice Batman and a really nice Batcycle. Number 3 is the McFarlane Toys Batman Beyond. Now this is the single-packed one that came with the jet thrusters and the flight stand. It could be any of them. There's been a lot of versions of this figure. Clearly not enough because he's still really hard to find. But overall, I mean, they captured the Batman Beyond look well. They added some extra detail that kind of gave him more of a comic appearance of his Rebirth comics, which I do appreciate. And overall, just a very, very nice Batman Beyond. And while the wings aren't removable, it's the most realistic positioning of the wings, and overall I can work with it, especially because you have things like the rocket thrusters. It just makes the whole thing work, and I really appreciate the way this figure turned out. Number 2 is the SH Figuarts Injustice Batman. Now this is based on the Injustice video game, and it's honestly one of the coolest looking Batman figures that I've gotten and one of the best to pose. They took sort of the Insurgency Batman design from the game, but added some new details. Particularly, one of the things I love is that they gave him a fully closed face mask version for the extra head that gives him sort of a tokusatsu vibe to it, which I really, really think is cool. His accessories are great, and the only thing that holds him back really is the big swooshy plastic cape. Other than that, this is absolutely one of my favorite Batman figures, and one of the most fun to pose in addition to just looking really good. Number 1 is the DC Direct / DC Collectibles Batman Arkham Knight figure. Honestly, I always kind of forget how great this figure is. For DC Collectibles and DC Direct, they ended up being mostly kind of like lightly articulated statues, but at one point they actually nailed articulation incredibly well. Sadly, they nailed articulation with also fragility later on, but this was one of the figures that hit that perfect sweet spot. In addition to the Arkham Knight design being one of my favorite Batman designs, because I think it just updates Batman, gives him that armored look without looking too armored, and it's just a wonderfully, beautifully sculpted figure where a cape isn't too long and he poses really nice. And honestly, what more can you ask for out of a Batman? I really do like the Arkham Knight Batman, and yeah, I kind of wasn't expecting him to top my list like this, but you know, he deserves it. It's actually a great figure that I think most people don't know about or even realize was as good as it was. So that was my list of my top 10 favorite Batman action figures. I know not everyone would agree, and I'd love to hear your lists in the comments down below. Also, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep up with future uploads. Be sure to check out Hero Club at hero-club.com for Batman news and more, and check out my awesome graphic designer on Twitter at darklaw643. And until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.